Welcome to the United State of Us podcast. My name is Erin Flood, and as the very first podcast of 2022, I'm honored to have with me Caryn Easterling, who is also more affectionately known as my mother. Welcome to the show, Mom.
Hi, Erin. This is a big honor to be chosen by your daughter to be important enough to talk to on something you worked so hard on. I'm so proud of you and all your podcasts and, all the things that all the podcasts that I've listened to that you've done are enlightening to me. And they have a real parallel in so many ways to, I think, everything that every woman has felt and gone through, from all time. I mean, it's just wonderful, though, to hear them because I think they offer such lovely support for each other. So thanks for having me on. I hope I can give some value added.
Well, I know you will, and that's why I want you to be my first podcast guest of the year. I really have thought about this, and we've talked about you being on before. And for those of you loyal listeners who are out there, if you listen to the podcast with my sister and I, or really, let's just be honest, lots of podcasts, I find myself with a little lump in my throat and a little emotional. And I'm sure this one with my mother will be no different.
You never know.
Yeah, so they might have to excuse this half swallowed voice sometimes. Okay, well, Mom.
Yes.
You know that the very first question I always ask on the podcast is for my guests to describe themselves using the roles or titles that you currently hold in your life. So can you do that?
Sure. So we'll go with titles. Mother would be the first. Well, no, wife was the first prior to mother. So wife, then mother of three wonderful daughters who now are mothers themselves and accomplished adults. I was a college professor and at UW Milwaukee, and very proud of being associated with that university. It's a fantastic research university as well as teaching university. I kind of felt like a professor mother sometimes there too, because I just grew to love my graduate students and really probably because I saw so many similarities in them as my daughters have, and some of the struggles. But it was great seeing them change over a 2.5-year period during graduate school, which is mostly the types of courses I taught were graduate courses, and see the change in them through education. So that was wonderful for me. Prior to going to UW Milwaukee, I was doing research and clinical work at the medical college and Freighter. And I started out as head of a speech pathology department there, and then would go to different rounds and medical rounds and start to ask questions, and then got very interested in research and the whys of things and how to make patient care better. So then I became a researcher and worked primarily with the division of gastroenterology and hepatology there. And so I did research with that group for quite a while. And after I left them, did research also with physical medicine and rehab and with the Department of Neurology. So they were all wonderful complements and research partners while I was also at UW1. So professor, educator, clinician, and I think another role would be volunteer. I always felt that it was important to volunteer and to serve our community. And I think a lot of these notions came from my father, who was a huge community, not an activist, but contributor. I guess you could have called him an activist too, though, because he helped to do so many things in Kenosha. And, he helped to bring the university there and Carthage College. And so I think just seeing that model, and he always put the most emphasis and importance on education in a person's life, that was really the game changer. And so I think that those are the primary titles for me at this time. I'm also a grandmother, but I think that kind of goes along with the whole mothering thing. If you're a mother and you get fortunate enough to become a grandmother, I didn't know if I really needed to become a grandmother. I never really thought to, I thought each one of you could have your families if you wanted, and great if you had children, but I didn't need it, to define me. But, lo and behold, the wonderful love that you get, the renewed love that perhaps your children are no longer giving you or showing as actively, your grandchildren do. And that's a sweet relationship to have. So I'll soon be a grandmother of 6. So 4 boys, 1 girl, and I don't know. We'll see what that 6th one is going to be.
I know, we can't wait.
Yeah.
Okay, and now can you, without using those roles and titles, although we certainly, got some peeks into your personality, how would you just describe the essence of you?
Well, I wrote a couple of notes down because I was thinking about that. To me, it's, you have to describe yourself then with adjectives. And I think I'm going down the right path here, Erin. I think I'm a contributor. Mm-hmm. I think I'm an evolver. Yeah. Because I've had to change so many times in my different roles to make it work. I believe I'm a believer in God and believer in myself, that I could do difficult things. And as a woman too, especially, I'm 71 years old. And so I came up through a bit of a difficult time in terms of women's roles and the types of positions they could hold and things they could do. And I tried not to, even my dad tried to put me into that role, and I refused out of college. He wanted me to be a bank secretary. Nothing wrong with bank secretaries, they're wonderful, but I wanted something a little bit more than that. And I think I'm a lover. I just love having my family around. I love having our grandchildren here. I love the essence of family and relationships, and growing together in the relationships, and accepting, which is part of loving, and supporting, which is part of loving. So I guess I'm a lover.
Good. I would agree with all of your words. So check, mother. That was good.
Thanks.
Okay. So one of the first things I want to talk about is the fact that you and I went through a transition sort of around the same time. My audience knows that my transition, is it 4 or 5? Now I can't even remember. I think almost 5 years ago, from professional life to stay-at-home mom and volunteer and whatever life. And it was around the time when you were also announcing your retirement. And while I'm certainly not comparing my career to your 40-year career, and all that you were able to accomplish and contribute in those 40 years, I do think there was some parallels to what we were going through and just finding our stride and finding ourselves in the new role without some of the things that come with being in a professional environment all of the time. Can you just talk to me a little bit about what the transition into retirement was like, and how you have continued, because you use the word evolve to describe yourself. And I think that that's a wonderful description. Can you just talk to us a little bit about your process in retirement and mentally, emotionally, what it was like to you to kind of redefine who you were going to be in your next chapter?
Sure. Well, the thought of retirement, of course, your dad and I always planned for retirement at some point, but the actual thought of retirement came kind of as a must do.
Yeah.
I think any transition in life, any change comes with some other catalyst that causes it. And at that time, we had both of our fathers living very closely to us, within a few miles. And they were self-sufficient in their own apartments. And but we would have them over once a week for dinner individually so that we could have time with them. And you were all supportive of your grandfathers, which was wonderful. It was a great help. But it was strange because all of a sudden my father became ill. And it was within a matter of a week that he was hospitalized and then in hospice and passed away. And it was something just, systemic that happened, and he succumbed to it. And he was probably ready. He was 91 or 2. I forget now, but yeah, he was he was quite a force in all of our lives. And I think having him pass caused us, of course, to reflect on our lives and think about what else do we want to do beside this, these professional jobs that we've contributed to. And maybe we've had enough of that and should move on. Well, within 3 weeks of my dad passing, um, my husband, Don's father passed away. And he was actually mad that my dad died before him. He said he shouldn't have died before I did. I was sicker than he. And I mean, it's all ridiculous, to think about this, but it's some of the things you remember. And he then passed away. So, to go through these traumatic, life-changing experiences of two men that were just wonderful people, each with their own characters and wonderful memories. But to see them leave us within 3 weeks really caused us both to just sit down and reflect and say, what are we going to do from here? And, are we doing as much with our lives as we should be? Is this a message from God that we need to rethink what we're doing? Take our blessings and distribute them some other way, and take time with people we love, with each other, and do more service to the community. And so very honestly, your dad was 65, I was 60, and I said, no, I can't cut the cord. I can resign from the department as a full-time position, but I have to do this gradually or I'll lose my mind. So, Erin, my transition, as you know, was gradual. I kept teaching. But I also had flexibility to my schedule to be able to go in and teach and do more from home, and thus spend time with grandchildren, with you if you needed it, with Mandy, with Stephanie. So it was just a wonderful time to be able to have more of my life in my life. And but when when you have those changes and your role changes, the your importance also changes in the light of a lot of those who are around you, or at least that's how you perceive it. You're still fulfilling a role, but it's maybe you aren't getting the same kudos, the same feedback, the same whatever. And so then you try to look for it other ways. And I certainly got it from doing things with my grandchildren and with all of you and with our church. I then led a search for a new pastor, which took 18 months. I tried to learn to play guitar, which was a failure, but I'm gonna do it yet.
No,
And
no judgment. No
yeah,
judgment.
so I think you just, when you're a person who does things and has had relatively good success, you continue to look for things that will give you some of those same feelings of success. And I have to say, I didn't look back and regret a thing. But I think that I had about a year where I was probably bugging all of you by saying, I just don't feel like I'm important enough in your lives. And I think that that's something that a lot of older people still feel. I wish this podcast could be listened to by some grandmothers or mothers, because I think that we all have that feeling at this point of our lives where we wish we had more dialogue, more consistent dialogue with our children, and that we actually knew about their lives and could contribute in some way with some wisdom, or say something, some little thing sometime that could help them through it. Because I think life at your point of life is hard. It's a struggle. You probably doubt yourself more than you accept yourself and cheer yourself on. And it's a waste of time. It's a huge waste of time. And my good friend and I talk occasionally about how we wish we would have called our fathers or our mothers more, at this stage, because we miss that in our own children, and you guys all are very good. So imagine me, I must be very needy.
No, but I think there's so much truth in what you're saying, and I appreciate you being so honest about it, because I mean, truthfully, I think that when we grow into adult children, we sometimes forget that our parents are human and going through the same evolution that we're going through, just about different things in a different stage. And sometimes I think we expect our parents to be immune from having a behavior where we're like, what is up with them? Why are they acting like this? Or, and the truth is, as we become adults, it's not that those behaviors are suddenly there or what, but maybe you just know, like, you're an adult. You can know that maybe today isn't a great day for me, or listen, it hurts my feelings that as an adult, you call when you need something, and then you never call after to tell me if it's fixed. You never call after to tell me what the success is, or, there are things about being adult children where we still need to recognize that our parents are human,
no matter how bad or good your mother or father, notice what term came first. I did say wife because I didn't want to be out of order there. But, mother, father, those are such key roles. Those are definers. Why do you think you get a job? Why do you think you put so much into your profession? Sure, you get perks back. Sure, you get, your ego fed. Sure, you get your name on things. Sure, you get paid. But it is to provide for your family, and it's to give them the education that you believe they need to have a better life than you gave them. You always, I believe most parents want that for their children. And, in every opportunity that you may have had or may not have had, but you want to give them that same. So I think that no matter what, Erin, as we get older, all parents, all they want is that feedback and sharing. Don't want a lot of your time, but want to know that you might be thinking of them first too, sometime, and I think life is hectic, and it's so humorous to me. I smile sometimes when I listen to all the places you all are running with the kids. And I think about the snowstorms and taking, driving through the snowstorm. We talked about that the other night, you and I, driving through the snowstorm with you kids to take you to dance, and having the third child who could care less, just wants to go to bed in the car, and how difficult all that is. But it's your life, although activities might be different, or ages might be different, it's the same stuff going on, and sometimes a mom or dad can just add a little bit of wisdom and give you a little bit of encouragement too. And I think that that's one message that I think is so important, that you don't forget that your parents were mothers and fathers, and went through the same thing that you're going through.
Well, and two, maybe just to go back to what you said at the beginning, that the dynamic, I think you need to allow your dynamic to continue to evolve. So where your parents really are the providers initially, that as adult children, we're really doing our parents and ourselves a disservice to not look at that relationship as a friendship. Would I call my friend and check in? Would I give my friend some grace if they were a little off when we talked? Would I offer to go and do something with my friend if I knew that they were, I don't know, maybe struggling to find a passion or a purpose, again, or struggling to know what our spot was in each other's lives, And I think just giving, so often I think we go back into our family dynamic and we're frustrated by the fact that everyone sees us as we're 12 years old or as we were 20 years ago. And we don't give ourselves enough, like, what are you doing? How are your behaviors reflecting the person you are now versus the person you were 20 years ago? If you don't want everyone to look at you like a taker, stop acting like a taker when you go back into that environment. If you don't want people to look at you like the drama queen, do you overemphasize and do other things to be dramatic when you're there to prove that you're something else? Well, maybe you're playing right back into that role, so it's like, I really, I think mostly since I've been sick and I sort of laid in bed and just watched our family function around me for a month. I think I've just been maybe more aware of how we have to allow our dynamics to evolve and then hopefully show up in the relationship as not only the evolved person we are, but the evolved role that we need to play in that dynamic.
Well, I think, Erin, you touched on so many important things. And I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I really feel like it boils down to two words: time. So take time to answer a text, answer an email, call, and honesty. If you didn't have a good relationship with your mother and she always bugged you about your appearance or your weight or your whatever your accomplishments, if you didn't live up to her, try to figure out, if you know better than your mother is saying, have an honest discussion with her about, and just say, we've got to have boundaries. You're wrong on this, you're right on this. And I think that it's time and honesty and treating that person like an adult. But it's a two-way street. And I think you and I have done a very fine job of, evolving. And I really attribute a lot of that to you in your growth. So.
Well, you're giving me too much credit, but thank you. But I do want our listeners to know that as much as we can sit down and have this conversation like this now and be honest about how things have evolved, we've also had moments where we've probably both been like, I'm good for a little bit. I could take a break from her. And, or moments when, and this is one thing that I really want to highlight, because it's something that I've realized about myself. And I'm sure there are going to be some people that listen that are like, no kidding, Erin. And other people that think, never thought of it that way. But I often think about how when I am feeling insecure or unsure about something, the people that really take the brunt of it are like the kids and Eric, because they're the people that I'm with all the time. So if I'm feeling insecure, unsure, unsettled, and maybe not the kids, but probably Eric takes the brunt. I'm quieter toward him. I'm get a little more ice queeny. And I also suddenly start to expect from him all of these things that are not his to own or do for me. They're mine to do for myself. So I really place unrealistic expectations on him. Well, I really think that the other people that bear the brunt of it are probably still our parents, even as adult children, because we still somehow expect our parents to just know what we need or know what we're feeling or know the right thing to say to us.
When you were 12, you called it blame.
Yeah.
You want to blame them, but now you call it take equal responsibility, Mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And really it's so unfair because none of it's yours to own. But I think again, that's part of the evolving dynamic, is allowing that to grow and change, and then being willing to say, I understand that maybe in our family dynamic, I understand that reaction has more to do with where she is than where I am right now. And I'm going to give her some grace on that, or no matter how old I get, Dad still might react with a sharp tongue sometimes because he's worried, not because he doesn't like me or love me or, whatever. It's just, but I think that's important to say, because again, it's so hard to not fall back into mentally, being 12 or 15, or they're always going to feel that way about me. And it's like, no, you feel that way about you. You bring into that dynamic how you're feeling about yourself. They're not even probably thinking about that. So allowing that break to not always tell yourself what your family member is thinking, I think is an important.
I think, and a good example of something kind of funny are the progressive commercials. I think that one needs to look at those commercials and say, don't become your parents. And I think, yeah, in certain ways, but you could evolve and become wonderful in many ways like your parents too. But I think it's just all of us as parents, whether you're the grandparents or the parent, all of us just need to keep evolving and keep up on, some pop culture, what people are doing, podcast, you just need to keep up on them, on social media, on how the world is going to understand each other better too. I really feel like a lot of our vehicles for communicating and seeing each other and how we spend our time help us understand each other better too. And I think that that's why we have to keep growing and seeing, but your children also have to let you into their lives.
Or let you grow.
Yeah. So it's a real yin and yang, right? It's a real two-way street, to use something a little commoner. But I think that the acceptance of some things will never change. The other thing I wanted to say to you that I think is so interesting to me, you're very into fitness and in health, and not that your sisters aren't, they are, but I think this is more of your passion.
Yeah.
And I think back of parenting, and I so often think about how, your children are going to do as you do, not as you say. And that old adage is so true, because no matter how much you yell a thing or talk a thing to death or direct a thing at your children, they're going to listen somewhat, but what they really learn is what you do.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because during during my early life, I mean, I wanted to become Gloria Steinem. I wanted to be, I read the, Second Sex book. I just wanted to be a woman that changed the way we did things. And so a lot of it was in our eating at home. I always tried different things. I tried to make homemade yogurt, homemade pasta. And, I always felt that we had to move. I hated running, but after I had you, I ran to just try to be fit. And I was never athletic. I mean, that wasn't something, again, that was offered to
I was
me.
gonna say, you weren't afforded the opportunity as a child.
No,
Yeah.
no. And so, again, there's so much that has changed, and it's so wonderful that it allows women so many opportunities, and so it's just interesting to see how all of you have evolved, and you're not afraid to do physical things. You're not afraid to, change the way you're eating, to become healthier, and now there's so many avenues too to find out about all of that and learn about. So it's just it's interesting how you subliminally, and maybe not so subliminally, but it's not like I ever said you exercise or you have to eat this way, or it's just that your children really take on so much that you think you're not teaching them. Oh boy.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Um, okay, I want to transition a little, and you kind of hinted at this, but can you talk to us a little bit about, you lost your mother at 19?
Mhm.
Um, and I know that you had a lot of influence, really positive, strong female influence also from your grandmothers. But can you just talk about maybe how having the presence of your grandmothers like you did and the loss of your mom at such a young age impacted how you chose to show up as a mother?
Sure. Well, actually, my maternal grandmother, who moved from Chicago when my brother, who had Down syndrome, was born, she lived with us to help my mom. And so there were four of us kids at that time. She actually passed away. I don't know if I ever told you this story, but she passed away rather traumatically when we were out to eat at a restaurant and had a subarachnoid stroke. And she passed away there in the restaurant. And but she lived with us, and I spent a lot of time with her growing up, and the best times were baking with her. She was German. She couldn't cook worth a darn, but she could bake, and those were such lovely times, with her. Other than the fact that she liked to watch baseball, I could never understand that. So, but she was just a lovely, caring woman. um, so she passed away, and then my brother passed away shortly after that, my younger brother. And my mom then was diagnosed with cancer shortly after that, maybe within 5 years, and died when I was in college at Marquette. And it was it was a really hard time for me because my dad, who was a young man, um, dated, and so that was difficult. I felt like I had, no parents anymore because he was trying to find himself, and he was pretty prominent in the community, and but that relationship with him changed, and not that he wasn't loving and supportive, he was, but it was just a difficult transition. So I can remember telling him that no matter what, I said, I don't know if I'm going to get married. I don't know if I'll ever get married, but I'm going to have children. And I can remember the look on his face because I just wanted a family. I wanted to be a mother.
Mhm.
So that was a little difficult when, sorry.
No, take your time.
So I knew that although I had to have a career because it was just that time, I told you I wanted to be Gloria Steinem, and I was going to work and I was going to be a great mom and I was going to do it all because that's what women were supposed to do. They had the chance and I had the responsibility to do it. And so um, I was in a band when I met your father. He was working in a supper club, and I was singing in a band from Marquette. And I was in graduate school, just finishing up my master's degree. And I met him, and he was just the most wonderful person. He sat and talked to me for hours, and he actually listened to me. He didn't want to change me in any way. He wanted me to be everything I wanted to be. And I knew that he was it. And I had dated a lot of people, but they all wanted to mold me into something that, you know, whatever they thought I should be. And your dad was just perfect. And so we got married 6 months after we met. And
You would have killed us.
yeah, I would have killed you. I would have totally killed you. And but you know, he was just, and we never really talked about having a family. Maybe we did, but Mandy was born about 2 years later. And he was my husband. As you know, your father is a hard worker, and we worked hard, and we worked hard together, which was wonderful, and with just a lot of respect and support, which is, you know, I think about it now and it's just crazy how wonderful it worked out for not knowing each other very long. Um, and then, you know, I just decided that being a mom was maybe going to be kind of like Father Knows Best, which nobody is going to know that TV series that listens to you, but it was June Cleaver and she wore pearls and I didn't have pearls, but I was going to be a great mom. You know, the holidays were going to have meaning and we were going to have tradition established. And no matter how much we had or didn't have, it was going to be loving. So, you know, my mom didn't work and she was not a happy person. She should have worked. She had a lot of talent, but it wasn't a time for women to be working. And I was going to work. And and your father was very supportive. And fortunately, we had my husband's parents to watch all of you. Your grandma and grandpa would come. And then you had a great Montessori school that you started at 2.5. But, you know, I always worked and sometimes part-time. And I just wanted to make sure that if you guys wanted to work and have a career, that you knew it was possible, that you knew it was possible to have a loving family and do something for yourself. But I mean, it really does take everyone pitching in, I mean, to make it work. So I think it's, you know, it's when you lose something, Erin, you either, I guess, go into the pits of despair, or you say, I'm going to make something of this, you know. And with losing my mom, not having a role model, I kind of made it up. So I kind of made up what I thought a good mother should be. And the rest is history.
Well, Mom, you are a good mom. You know that. Well, I'll tell you again. You are a good mom. There we go. I almost made it with no tears, and here they are.
Thank you. Well, I've been choked up, so sorry. My voice sounds so weird.
No, it's okay. It's good. I do feel like, though, I never knew that about, it explains to me actually a lot about you, as far as your career ambitions and goals and why that was so important to you. You know, I think that there are two things that are always true about kids and parents. And one is that it doesn't matter what your parents done, just a kid just always wants to know that their parent loves them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing is that it doesn't matter what kind of parent the parent is, kids just want their parents to be happy.
Yeah.
And to see a happy parent, and I don't know that kids are always conscious of that, but I certainly think that if people would look back at their childhoods, they'd know that those are two things that instinctively as a child they wanted to belong and see somebody that they love to be happy.
Well,
So that
Erin,
really explains a lot.
I will say this again. I go back to the kids pick up not what you say, but how you are and what you do. And every I've said this to your father so many times. I will never become the woman that sits with her purse on Friday night and Saturday night, because that was the custom then. People went out to supper clubs. My dad would come home. He owned 3 grocery stores. He worked hard.
Yeah.
He worked more hours than most men at that time, probably. But he came from poor upbringing and he wanted to be a success, and he was a great success.
Yeah.
But my mother, God bless her, sat in the chair. And I never talked to my brother or sister about this, so I don't know if they were even moved by it, but I was. She was not happy until he could fulfill her happiness by taking her out. And that was her big event. I just thought, I am never becoming that person. I am going to make my own happiness. We are going to be a team. It's not going to, your dad and I always worked, and our money was our money. It was never his or mine. And, later on, as a college professor, you don't make much, but I had a great sense of fulfillment from what I did in the last 10 to 20 years of my career. And your dad loved what he did too. But he was able to, you can't equate things or keep track by dollars.
Yep.
It's all about your sense of fulfillment and happiness, because that's how you become an even better parent.
Mm-hmm.
If you're feeling good about yourself, so I think that's why, Erin, when you talk about transitions, like you leaving your job, you then had to look at what you needed to feel good about yourself, and use your wonderful talents and abilities at communication and insight, and and do something with it. So
Yeah, well, and I think there is some like magic sauce, I'll call it, in just knowing that at the end of the day, when that's all stripped away, you really know what makes your heart happy.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
When my mom died too, I had been a counselor in the dorms at Marquette for 3 years of my college career, and oh my gosh, she passed away, and school started the next week, and I had to counsel kids that were on my floor, and
Yeah.
I was not capable. And all my friends lived off campus, my support system. I'm surprised I made it, honestly, because I don't know how I did it without someone else's help. So, it probably was friends, or maybe I kept so busy. I don't know what it was. I didn't allow myself to think about it, because I was with her when she died too, and she was too young to die, and it was a very horrible death, and she told me she was too young to die, and what a horrible death it was. So those are things that, again, uh, those things that carry a lot of emotion that stick with you.
Yeah, that you just spend a lifetime working through.
Yeah. But I just worked through them by saying, I'm going to be the best person I can be, and the best mom, and the best in every role I'm in, that God has blessed me with the opportunity to be in, and I'm going to just do the best I can. So I think, it's all these events, lives that you can either be crushed by or you can make somewhat positive and move ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, you talk about yourself, and now I'm got a little sniffly there, but you talk about like how you're surprised you made it. And it's funny, obviously, I didn't know you at 19, but watching you my whole life, I'm not surprised you did, because I think, we tease you and we call it airport mode when you go into over functioning and you kind of go into overdrive, like we're late for a flight and everybody needs to focus and hurry up. But you have this ability to keep grinding when stuff is hard. And I can remember, actually, this is random, but I can remember when a high school classmate of mine passed away, and and I think I was just floundering a bit in my 17-year-old, 16-year-old mind at the time, just with my other choices and sense of self-worth and all the things you go through at that time of your life. But I do remember you giving me the very valuable lesson of, like, God's got you, just keep going. And although that certainly is not comparable to the loss that you had, I think it just explains how in emotionally challenging times, that experience in your life has given you the ability to know that God has given you everything you need to get through it, even if you don't know what through it looks like.
Yeah. Well, and at that time, I didn't know about time, that allowing time and going through and finishing what I was there for, at college, you have another year to finish, and, you'll get through this, and time will make it better. And just going through some of the motions, of the things you're responsible to do. But because I was too young. But that's what I mean. I think it had to be good friends, and a couple of those friends are still friends of mine today. It had to be some of their wisdom and just comfort, and the strength that they gave me just by being there.
Yeah.
So it's a strange time though too, because I was I was blessed at that time with good looks, and those good looks got me into the Miss Wisconsin pageant through Racine, and I was living a lot of incongruities. So I wanted to be independent and the Gloria Steinem, and be the strong woman that set the pace, and yet I was falling back into some images and roles that people wanted us to be at that time, which is the pretty, supportive of men's journey kind of woman. And so I was working through a lot, at that time. I really didn't know what I wanted to be. I thought at that time I was going to go into prison counseling and be a criminologist. And, I was very socially minded, but it was the time, Erin, it was the 70s. And so there was a lot. There was a lot. I was a pretty complex woman at that time with not a lot of, I could have used a mom, to kind of sit down with me and say, you can kick the hot pants and the leather boots, and, your love of shoes, Erin, too, I feel like is genetic because I was just into like fashion and wild shoes, and, just, so it's kind of, it was a tough time for me trying to find out who I was. But it worked out, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, it did, but I appreciate you um, sharing those memories and how that impacted you and the kind of mother you are. Okay, before we conclude today's episode, the last thing I'd like to talk about is um, you have seen the roles of what women can be change so vastly in your lifetime. I remember being younger and you telling us about like the fact that, I mean, girls didn't really have gym class when you were young, and they couldn't, be part of sports teams, and sort of being an accessory to a man's life versus being very capable of leading your own life. And when you look at your grandkids and you think about what you've seen change in your lifetime and perhaps what will change in theirs, can you just tell us about what you think are the most important lessons that you've learned kind of as you've evolved as a female and watched all of these things grow and change? What are the most important lessons you hope to pass on to your grandkids?
Number one, and it's the same thing we told you, is have your own passion. You need your own personal passion. The other person can understand it and be supportive of it, hopefully supportive of it. That's a very important thing, but you do need your own passion. And by that, I'm saying, look to your talents and abilities, figure out what you are good at and what seems to draw you and keep you there for hours thinking about, and follow that and do it, because then you're going to be great at it. Whatever your passion is, if you follow it, you will be good at it and you will contribute to others' lives.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. Two would be education. We are believers in education. We support some scholarships, one at UWM, and we give to Marquette as well. We just feel education changes lives, and changes lives even when you don't want to change it, changes lives, and it's wonderful. So have a good education to support your passion. And I think that's another thing that's so great. I think that people are sometimes waiting now to go to school before, so that they really understand what their direction is. And I don't think everybody needs a 4-year or more, because I've got many more years of education than that, but I don't think everybody has to have that. But I think you have to then find that education that supports your passion. I think finding good people, so good friends, and of course a good mate. That's that's what will make your life happy, is finding a good support and people to love you. I think those are probably the rest will come. The rest happens. And I think too, this has been a theme in a lot of your interviews too, Erin, is God's played a great place in our lives. In your early education, you went to Catholic schools and Catholic high school, and then you went to a Catholic college. I think that knowing and believing that there's something better and bigger than you is so important. That humility that we all need as human beings is really reinforced by the presence of God.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully said. I couldn't agree more.
Thanks.
I couldn't agree more. Well, I know that as my sisters and I are very different, and if they're first time listeners, I'm the middle, maybe most strong-willed child of my two sisters, and we all have husbands that we love and kids that we love. I know that it can't be easy to be all the things that are required from us. of a mother to, in all the various ways that we require it from you. But I want you to know that you are a wonderful, wonderful mother, and all the things that you set out to be as a mom, you are.
Thank you.
We're very lucky to have you.
Thank you, honey. I'm very lucky to be your mom.
Most of the time, you probably feel that way.
Well, if one fails, the other two pick it up. So that's
right.
It's a majority. I'm good with the majority.
Yeah, thank God when one's off, the other two compensate, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, not all three of us usually aren't off on this at the same time. Thank God. Yes. Oh, well, on behalf of myself and my mama, thanks for tuning into the United State of Us today. I hope that this conversation lends itself to examining the relationships that you have with your own mothers. And after you listen, I hope you call them and let them know what they mean to you. Love you, Mom. Thank you.
Love you too. Love you too. Have a good day, honey.